Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. We're continuing on in season 8, so if you haven't listened to the other episodes in this season or our prior 7 seasons, you can make sure to go back and listen to those at www.bridgingchicago.com. But today we are joined by Theresa VanderMeer, and you are the founder and CEO of Work+Shelter, which as I was researching your organization and your background, there's so many interesting things here, but I'm really interested to hear about like the string through all of these things. And so that's what I'm really excited to hear about. But let's start with where we always start on the podcast, because we are Bridging Chicago. Can you tell us your Chicago story, please?
Indeed. I currently live in Uptown in the historic Teller Flats. Are you familiar with that high rise that's on the board?
Yeah.
At the intersection of Broadway.
Okay, I was wondering if that was the place.
Yeah, so that building has an incredible history where it was the tallest high rise in that neighborhood when it was built about 100 years ago, and it immediately was at full occupancy, so they added a few more floors. This is the first time in my life I've lived in a high rise, though I'm originally from the Midwest and spent many years via Michigan to New York and then India.
Oh, wow.
So that's
it's a natural
segue. Yeah. So I do run a company in India, but it's also based in Chicago. So it really is this sort of like hybrid two countries, one organization. Originally, I came to Chicago for a fancy corporate job. I lived on LaSalle, I worked on LaSalle, and eventually I was able to transition into running my own business full time. So that's what we're here to talk about today. But originally I came to Chicago for that purpose, and I stayed because I love it.
Yeah, we're already sort of getting that string, which is really cool to put together. Because when I was reading your bio, it's like rural town in Michigan, and I'm from a rural town in Illinois. And people always think, they know small, it's always like, I'm from a small. It's like these small towns, I think, culturally are amazing to be children in. Like, I loved growing up there.
Yes.
But being an adult, I think, is a completely different story there. And so for me, it still has informed a lot of who I am. Do you feel like for you, do you still think of that little girl in Michigan on the dirt road? Or, does that still kind of inform how you do work or how you do business?
Nathan, that is such a sweet question to ask. Because I think when I talk about where I'm from, generally, because it's not a place where there's a ton going on, people are not that interested. I do think there's something about growing up in a small town where your sense of safety and community is really strong. So when I was growing up, we didn't have keys to our home because we never locked the doors. Yeah. And that feeling of that I could trust people, that there was nothing to fear, really accompanied me when I went to live in other big cities. Yeah. Now, I was definitely the girl in New York who was making eye contact with the folks that you don't necessarily want to make eye contact with, right? Yeah. There's a sense of self-preservation I think you need to learn and be more aware of when you're in big urban areas where you don't know everyone and you can't honestly trust everyone. But I think that there is an openness and a warmth that comes from originating from a place where you can assume that everyone is a part of your community and are friendly. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think for me, starting life that way is a really cool thing. I think having that foundation of just believing that people are good people. And, there's that, that reality gets a little shattered as you go on, as you move to bigger cities or whatever. But I think most of us still hold on to that a little bit. And especially when you get to go home and still experience that a little bit. So
totally.
Definitely makes sense. I'm wondering about how that person in university kind of creates a discipline, because I was reading about that as well as you designed your own interdisciplinary program, which is anthropology, international affairs, economics, women's studies, and South Asia studies.
A lot going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
But it's kind of also like self-evident in what they ended up doing. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I was saying like this string that runs through this is starting to kind of come together. But that's certainly one of those like pivot points on the string of like, okay, when you're creating this program and you're saying like, what do I enjoy? Like, what am I interested in? Who are the people that I'm interested in doing this life with? You kind of start to see that move through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to surprise you and maybe and tell you that I didn't actually have a plan.
Okay.
I was the first person in my family to go to college, and it was a pretty big deal. I come from a working class community. I'm talking a lot of people who are in the factory manufacturing world. My mother was a welder. Like straight up like Rosie the Riveter, you know, at a furniture company, Steelcase, if any of you out there know that.
We have a couple of chairs around here.
They're great. Yeah. She didn't make that one probably, but you know, she did for a lot of years. And then my dad had a business in the tool and die world. So, you know, vehicles and the whole supply chain manufacturing for that. So I'm telling you this because we're talking about, remind me what we're talking about.
Oh, we were talking about your how you kind of created this program.
Sure.
So like how that person ends up being a person that starts this thing.
Yeah. So the thread from there is really, I didn't know anybody who had gone to college or university but my teachers. And so I just knew that in order to get outside of my small town and see more of the world, that I needed to get good grades and work hard. And so I applied to one school, the University of Michigan. Thank God I got in. Yeah. So I ended up at the University of Michigan, and it was just incredible. So many opportunities, so much support. And I just started taking classes. Now, I went to talk to a guidance counselor, a career counselor, maybe a year or two into studying, and they said, oh, you've actually taken so many classes in anthropology, you almost have a minor. You need to take a few more to get a major.
Yeah.
And then the international affairs part really just came also from taking classes around certain interests. So the economics piece here, I think I started to realize that if I could understand our monetary system, then I could understand what needed to be changed to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So racial, gender issues, these kind of things, it felt like a very powerful lever to me. And that is, you know, my business today is combining business with social good.
Yeah.
So that came together at the University of Michigan, purely based on interest, not a plan.
Well, I think that's really amazing because when most students go in, they either have a plan or someone creates a plan for them, right? Which is great. You know, you have guidance counselors or career counselors who are saying, okay, if you want to do this, here's what you need to do. But I think there's a good number of students who feel like they're taking these classes that really don't seem to have much to do with these things that they want. And so I know this system of like, oh, well, you have to take all these 10 basic classes your freshman, sophomore year in order to, it's like kind of challenging that and saying, well, why can't I take classes on things that I find really interesting, that if I'm passionate about it and if I understand the economics, won't that kind of work out the way that it's supposed to? Or, and I think in some ways that sort of, if not answers the questions, it does kind of challenge that narrative of like, well, you have to do this or else, you know, you're not going to be able to get a job somewhere.
Yeah. I feel like I relate to, as a student, I was confused about how to ensure that I did work that represented my values. And when I walked into the business school, I run a business now, but when I walked into the business school, I met people who were really preoccupied with feathering their own nests.
Yeah.
And so I didn't identify with that. But now I really wish I had taken Accounting 101. Some more stats. You know, I really would love more sophisticated financial modeling skills. But at the time, they not only didn't seem relevant to me, they seemed like the antithesis of what I was trying to do, which was ultimately have a positive impact in the world. At this point, my perception of business has shifted a lot. At that time, I probably would have called myself anti-capitalist. But now I have a lot of, to be honest, like affection for this model that is really powerful for making people's lives better because it creates wealth and can lift them out of poverty. So,
and really, almost more importantly, like generational wealth, not just wealth that will make their lives better, but wealth that will make lives better for communities and for families, you know, throughout the generations, which I think is really important. And, you know, money is not evil. Money is it's a resource, the same as education is a resource. And I think that's something that you have obviously considered, which I think is really important. In this sort of sphere that you're in business, do you feel like that's kind of a lonely place sometimes of how you're trying to do things, or how, not just the sustainability, because we hear a lot more now about sustainability, but, you know, the things that you're considering when you're running your business, does that seem like lonely work sometimes? Because I don't hear about a lot of people kind of doing things this way.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I think my world is a lot of people doing that.
Okay.
And so even though it may feel niche from a broader business perspective, there are certainly many different communities and collectives of people who are using the tool of business for social good. So you might have heard the term fair trade.
Yeah.
So fair trade, and the most common representative of fair trade is when you go and you purchase coffee at a grocery store, you see a little logo that says fair trade. Yeah. And that means something. That means that someone has been paid a good wage, has good conditions for their work, it's safe, that their humanity is valued. So fair trade is one world. There's the social enterprise world. Even organic means a lot because it has a lot of protections for the workers in that world. So I think there are these terms that maybe we might see pasted on a product, but there are real movements and real companies that are behind them. I do have to say, I think entrepreneurship is lonely no matter what world that you're in. You have to be responsible. There are so many challenges. You know, I hate to use a war analogy, but sometimes it does feel like, you know, you're really in the arena. And that is definitely taxing, especially for me, or not especially for me, but in our situation, we have a center in India, and there are certain challenges associated with living there, being there, working there that, you know, are really outside of the realm of what, you know, I would necessarily have done in a job in the U.S. So there is that.
If you had like a 9 to 5.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good to hear. So fair trade or organic or some of these labels aren't just for the product, but also in the way that the products are produced, manufactured, or distributed even.
Yes.
And so that sort of follows throughout. So I think that's encouraging for sure, because I always, you know, we see it from our perspective as, you know, it's hard not to see the big conglomerates that do these things, you know, and not that any one way is better or worse than the other, but we think of like the Mondeleses, you know, these companies that are producing a ton of what we use. And the, you know, the fair trades seem a little smaller. But I think also, if you look, there is access to those companies as well. But have you seen access to these fair trade markets, fair trade brands increase for the general public?
Absolutely. So when I first started Work+Shelter, it was in response to meeting a community of women in Delhi that I wanted to support. And I thought, you know, what would be the best way for me to be able to sustainably contribute in a positive way to their lives? So I started purchasing products from them, selling them in the US, ordering more, and eventually we started a facility and it grew and grew. So at that time, I didn't even have the language to describe it. I didn't call it a social enterprise. It was a project where I wanted to support these women. But now there are social good businesses, impact entrepreneurs. You know, there's more language around this. And I think there was a moment in collective consciousness when a factory in Bangladesh collapsed. The Rana Plaza disaster, where something like 1,100 people died producing apparel that we wear. And it was at that time I had started Work+Shelter, but I had a job in the private sector. I was working by the Empire State Building in New York, and every day on the way to the train, I had been working late. I wanted to stop and do something, and so I would go shopping. I had a platinum credit card at the Banana Republic. I don't remember how much you needed to spend a year to have a platinum card. I mean, it was a lot, you know?
Yeah.
But Banana Republic their parent company is The Gap. And after Rana Plaza, where all of these vulnerable seamstresses and tailors died, The Gap refused to sign a agreement on having more protections for workers in Bangladesh and these kind of countries. And so at that moment, it crystallized for me that I can't actually participate in a production system. I cut up my credit card, my Banana Republic credit card, and I never shopped there again. And I think my journey with understanding, you know, the power of this sort of business model, but also the power of our decisions every day, really grew alongside many other people. And I think what's amazing about running a social enterprise is that you actually feel like you can make so much change in the world. So say I go to a restaurant and it's like, oh, I don't want a plastic straw. Okay, I saved 4 straws this month.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually like, fine, it's good. Everybody should take agency over what they do. I love it. But the scale is so small. Now, at my business, we source over 50,000 packaging bags per year. They could be plastic from petroleum products. They're not. They're cellophane. And so that's plant-based, you know, it's biodegradable. And that is just a huge, huge impact. 50,000 bags?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's massive. And that's just going to scale.
Yeah.
You know, so
Definitely.
there's something energizing about not just running this business, but being able to share that lesson with other folks in business. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You know, if you're an office assistant or an office manager and you need to be purchasing the t-shirts or the tote bags or the gifts for the holiday party, you can make a decision to purchase organic, recycled, women-owned. You know, we do have those choices in the business world and outside of it. And to me, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think staying encouraged that, you know, whatever impact you make is a good one is also important. It can be hard, like you were saying. Okay, I'm gonna get a reusable straw. It's like, well, is my 1-2 straw a day gonna like make a difference?
You got like in your pocket, you know, with your kerchief,
It's funny because it also becomes a bit of a cultural thing itself, where it's like you go on TikTok and you see all the people like, oh, this is my, you know, straw, like whatever, and you're like, oh, now it's a personality almost.
Yeah. A virtue competition too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't bring my straw. Like.
but in some ways, it's also like, well, you know, sometimes it does take silly things to get people to be like, oh, I'll get a reusable straw, and then now you've taken out another 2 to 4 straws a day.
Yeah.
So I think there is good in so many of these things, even if it seems to like at its base to be very small. Like the exponential growth possibility, I think, can be huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. But also, what if the straw buyer, the person who is responsible at that restaurant, they just decide to buy a different straw?
Yeah.
That none of the people who get their drink need to make that choice anymore.
True.
You know, it's so much more efficient, and that's what's so exciting to me.
Yeah.
You know, the scale of the decision.
Yeah. So if people are responsible for purchasing their merch or their swag items for their organizations, they can come to you and say like, hey, we were going to give out tote bags. We want to do that better. And you can help them get the same or get a product that they will enjoy in a better way.
We can definitely help them do that. And that brings me to the point of this program where I give you a gift made from Work+Shelter.
Okay.
So this is swag we made for the Uptown Chamber of Commerce.
Oh my gosh.
And you can see we've got our Uptown Proud logo here. It might be a little big for you, but please take a peek.
Yeah.
So what are you observing
this is great.
about this jacket?
The feel is amazing.
Yes. So this material is actually made out of recycled bottles.
Really?
Talking about plastics that get disposed. So plastic bottles that are chopped up into little pieces, remade into thread, and actually knitted into this product. So this one order saved thousands and thousands of plastic bottles. So originally we designed this product for an accounting firm with thousands of employees across the United States and in different offices in the world. and each employee got one jacket. And so if you just think about how big that one order is, you know,
That's...
not just on the environment, but the women, it kept them busy for a month.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, what I love about this, there's so many things to love about this. The style is great. The feel is great. Like, you wouldn't guess this is anything different than something if you picked up a magazine, if you went to a store. Like, the zipper works really well. The pockets look nice. Like, you wouldn't think this is anything different. So if you're looking for a product to give away, there's no reason not to pick something like this.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. Yeah, this feels great. It's a little big, but we'll make it work for someone. I mean, we definitely have people who would enjoy this. So thank you.
Sure.
How does this impact continue? Like, how does it grow? Obviously, the more people come to you, the more people that order from you, that impact that you were talking about with the accounting firm can have actual numbers behind it. But in the future, you know, where does this go? What more impact can be made here?
Yeah, I mean, that really is how it works, is we get orders, we employ the women, we keep purchasing different materials, and that virtuous cycle continues and continues. So right now we have a little over 40 women actually working in India, and there's no shortage of women who want this work. Yeah. So the more orders we get, the more that we can add women to our training program. And what's incredible about being in business year over year, so it's been 13 and a half years.
Yeah.
I started this company while I was working full time. I was 25 and now I'm almost 40. And so there's something about showing up year over year where you get the opportunity to deepen your impact. For example, when we first started, there wasn't a lot of awareness around organic or ethical eco-friendly dyes in India. And that industry, the dyeing industry, the weaving industry, the knitting industry, grew up as we were growing up. And in the early years, people would say to me, you know, you really just have to focus on getting work for the women. You can't be concerned about the environment because you need to target your focus. And it just didn't make sense to me. I was watching with my own eyes the environment degrade around me. If you go on Google Maps, you can look up where Work+Shelter is. We are next to a dead river, about a mile away from a landfill that's always on fire. And on the other side, until a couple years ago, there was a coal plant in full operation. And so you're just bombarded with the pollution. And so for me, I said, I really don't want to contribute to this problem. It doesn't seem useful to be supporting these women with work, but also participating in the degradation of the environment. So it took a long time to even find organic cotton and then find a higher quality one. And oh my gosh, we were so excited when we found our first recycled materials. And then we realized we could print them. We could do this. Yeah. We could get a custom color. So now, year over year, we're just making our supply chain better. We've got incredible fabrics. But where we're focused right now is our packaging. Can we make sure our packaging, our paper packaging, are from forests that are protected and, you know, monitored and these kind of things? So that there's power in just showing up. So it's not just about scaling, it's like deepening the impact, compounding the impact over time.
So what if someone doesn't need thousands of something, but you know, needs a few of something? Is that something you could still do?
Absolutely. So our minimums are 50 pieces. If you wanted 50 of these jackets, we could make them for you.
That's great.
Also, we work with local companies who can screen print or embroider the items as well. If you want to order just a handful of tote bags, we have a supplier in Texas, and he'll make you 20 tote bags. And he'll get them to you later this week. So there are options for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
This has been such even more interesting than I thought. I knew it was going to be pretty interesting because I was like, this story, we got to dig into this a little bit. But it's been so interesting, and I really I'm just on board with what you're doing, and I really, we're in your corner, and we're really excited for what you're doing, and I hope to see it grow and grow and grow, because I think, I'll speak for myself, when I think about these things, I think how hard it must be to do this kind of thing.
Yeah. And
as you said, to do it year over year is even harder, to keep doing it, which is really just the entrepreneur spirit, right? It's the willingness to keep doing it, even if the results don't seem to be what other people think they should be. And I think we've learned that a lot from entrepreneurs, and that's definitely part of that spirit. But I think if more people know about this, and if more people who are responsible for these kind of products for their organizations, or even like if you're having a family reunion or something, this is just great for those things.
Yeah, thank you. And also, if you are out shopping in Chicago, Leela Barn in Andersonville, we do some custom tea towels and bandanas for them. So you could walk into a shop in Andersonville and get something that was locally designed, but also produced ethically. Pono Paws in Lincoln Square, the same. Greenheart is a nonprofit downtown. They give out t-shirts to every person who travels with their international programs. International Kitchens, they're downtown. They do trips to Italy, if you will. So these sort of folks really, they are local and the products end up locally, but we also know that the supply chain is ethical. So, I'm really grateful for those clients, and also you can get those products here.
And that is showing growth then, because you're seeing those more and more places, and I think that's wonderful. We want to make sure that if people want to connect with you, want to order something even, that they're able to do that. So can you share with us where people can connect with Work+Shelter, where they can connect with you, see your products?
Absolutely. So Work+Shelter, WORK, Shelter, SHELTER.co is our website. On our website, you can submit a form, you can send us an email, but also you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Theresa VanderMeer.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to link all of those places. So we'll if you are listening to this on the website or you visit the website, we'll make sure to put all those places on there so people can get to you for sure. Because as we said, we want to help grow this, and I think it's something that is worth doing that for. And so thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing the story of Work+Shelter with us.
Thank you.
And for the gift.
It's been so great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we want to thank our listeners. You have been wonderful, and thank you for coming back. You can obviously go to www.bridgingchicago.com to re-listen to this episode in case you missed something, or of course to find all the ways to connect with Theresa and her team. And also be sure to listen to the prior seasons of the podcast as we prepare to continue this season 8 of the Bridging Chicago podcast. See you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions, and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including, but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.